Thank you so much for having us in your home. I must say it's a beautiful home. And I am looking forward to a jolly good ride as we go on this conversation with history. Of course, you are our driver, and I'll be on the passenger seat while you take us through the curves and turns of history, going all the way to Katsina, because of course, you are representing Katsina on this program today, and we'll have so much to learn about Katsina and Saldana of Katsina. So you're welcome to Conversation with History, even though we are in your home. Thank you for having us.
So thank you very much for having me. And it's a pleasure and privilege to be the subject for this particular program. And I want to assure you that I will try to be a very good driver so that I drive you through the Katsina situation, Katsina history that I know. And at the end, I hope that you'll be better informed.
I'm looking forward to this ride.
Thank you.
So let's fasten our seatbelts now and let the journey begin.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So for starters, it will not be fair for the viewers who are seeing you in this regalia not to understand why we have you, adorn this beautiful cultural piece. It's a masterpiece, I must say. It's so beautiful, it's so catchy, and there is no way you will not be noticed in any crowd in the world. And that's the truth. I am not flattering you right now. It is just as it is. It's a moment of truth, and it's coming straight from the heart. The first question I would like to ask you is, how long does it take you to come up like this? From start to finish.
I would say on the average, it will take me about 5 to 10 minutes to get myself in this manner.
I'm surprised. Give this same task to a woman, probably an hour or two. We go into it.
That is why the will of a man. Ordinarily, as my person, I usually dress casually. What you see now is a reflection of what a titled person from Katsina should look like. And a Sardana of Katsina, most especially, should look in such a way as to represent the Emir of Katsina, the Emirate Council of Katsina, and the Katsina people generally, wherever they are. Okay,
so we're going to put the gear on 5-speed backwards because it's a driving lesson. We're going for a driving experience, a voyage of discovery. So we're going to put it backwards and go all the way to when you were born.
Very good.
Yes, and the question is, can you tell us a bit about your background and how you got here?
I was born in Katsina very early in the 50s. I schooled primary school, secondary school in Katsina. And of course, after my West African School certificate in December 1967, I left Katsina in pursuit of further education, which took me to Kano, to the UK, to the University of Ibrahim, to Harvard University, and to so many other institutions. Now, I am privileged to have been born during the colonial time. I schooled during the First Republic. I matured during the military. And I am now a product of all those things. When independence came in 1960, by that which time I was very young in primary school, I was about 9 years. Then, we now transcended from waving the British flag to waving the Nigerian flag. Now, the good thing or the situation was that up to that time, the schools were run on a strictly British system.
Would it be safe to say, by the long stretch of the imagination that, your interaction and engagement with the British culture has also informed why your quest for knowledge, formal knowledge is insatiable?
Yeah, you see, the interesting thing was that at the material time, especially in the northern part of the country, there was an encouragement for people to put their children in school. were privileged that I was, because my father had a little bit of Western education, so it was not a difficult thing. But first of all, the population was manageable. So the student population was also manageable. And at the material time, it was the native authority. When we started, it was the native authorities under the control of the local emirs that were in charge of virtually everything. Primary education was exclusively their own. And people were funding the education through local taxes. So really there was a general involvement. So those who took their children to school were particular in seeing that what they paid as taxes and what that were being used were not wasted. And another thing was that there were facilities. I mean, all these things were, even in primary school, were being fed, were being clothed, and were being taught properly. So we grew up really valuing and cherishing the education. And the authorities were particular about the products that were being produced by the system. Our future was more or less assured because you knew that you went to school and if you performed well, there was a job waiting for you, there was a life waiting for you. And nothing was spared to educate us. Nothing was spared.
So will that be a function of privilege, opportunity, or interest in education?
Okay. Interest, yes, because some of us were privileged to have had our parents to work for the native authorities, having had a little bit of education. So really, there was an understanding right from the home. But in the overall, I think there was a foresight. The local, especially in Katsina, the leaders of Katsina, from the emir down, they had the foresight of knowing that, look, the future will be very bleak for those who are not educated. And that if you succeed in going through and becoming educated, then the future was very wide for you. So they encouraged, in sometimes they cajoled, they pushed, they coerced people into going to school. And then the result is what we have now. Katsina is one of the environment within the Hausa speaking area that has the highest level of educated people, the highest level of people that have attained high positions, not only in the Katsina itself, but in Nigeria as a whole, and even the world at large.
I haven't heard you say all that you've said about privileges, opportunity, interest, and a structure, that was on ground then. The big question that will be asked next is, what happened?
You mean
why is that? Compared to now, I mean, there seems to be a very big and wide gap in terms of getting people from that region educated and enlightened, formally.
What has happened is really cannot be divorced from what is happening in Nigeria. You see, up to a point in time, public functions, public infrastructure, public amenities were being funded through taxes that were being collected. So there was a connect between the amount of taxes that were being collected and the quality of facilities that were. But somewhere along the line, and there was plan. Every setup, from the local authorities to the regional governments to the federal government, there was a concerted plan of what was expected to be an achievement over a period of time. What resources were required to finance such achievements and how such resources were to be sourced. Now, somewhere along the line, over time, by 1970s early, oil money came in. And suddenly, it became possible for public functions to be funded from sources other than the toils of the people. And therein lied really the problem. We lost direction, we lost sense of values, we lost commitment, and suddenly the number of people were growing in such a way that outpaced the development process through which we can increase the amount of resources. So there was a total mismatch. More people, less resources. And obviously the spread was very thin. We started consuming what we were not producing. We started changing our senses of values, our senses of livelihood to the point. And then corruption also set in. Because if money was coming without, and it's just like somebody winning a sweepstake or winning a jackpot. You see, when the money comes to you, when you have no plan or what to do with it, the likelihood is for it to change you forever. And if there's any problem in the inflow, then you run into problems. And that is precisely what we have now.
Would you say the structure, the existing structure, is also an enabler as to why the interest for education from the northern region has dwindled?
Earlier on, the people were made to believe that becoming educated provided you with a license to a good life, to readily available employment, to a better way of life, to more enlightened environment. And somehow, when we started producing more school leavers, and I mean across the board, without getting them employed and without training them to be self-sufficient in terms of creating their means of livelihood, people started to doubt the sincerity or the authenticity of the claim that education is a good way of get a better life. Then they started losing interest. And I said this with every emphasis. Our education system was not, from the onset, was not oriented towards making people to appreciate the fact that they can become employed themselves. It was tailored towards the acquisition of blue-collar jobs. That is why the emphasis was on the geographies, the histories, this. Now, when people started seeing that they could get the certificate, at first at secondary school, by the time I left secondary school, all you needed to do was to say that you wanted to, by the time you are finishing, a full scrap sheet will be pasted on the notice board. They will write customs, police, army, whatever. All you needed to do was to write your name. And that was all the application you needed to do. Now, over time, by that time, you can leave secondary school and have about 2, 3, or 4 different jobs waiting for you. Now, when that situation changed and people started seeing that they can leave their farms or the trade of their parents, go to school, finish, get certificates, and get no job, then they started questioning whether it was really worth any while to go to school.
That leads me to the next question of, the permutations of young people today. One of the questions that has always popped from the lips of young people today is, if our elders, had this beautiful, enabling environment, to thrive in terms of getting good education, getting a job afterwards, and settling down, into a beautiful, comfortable life. How come, there was no consistency? How come these same leaders who had the privileged upbringing are not making things difficult for them that are young people today?
They are right and also wrong. The environment is totally different. They expect the continuation of what was. I told you before, parents were not paying. Until my university education, I did not pay a kobo. Ask the average person, does he pay taxes? No, but he expects a lot from. He expects security, he expects welfare in terms of food, he expects infrastructure, to have good roads, good hospitals, good schools. But how much does he pay? Nothing.
Okay, so I'd like for you to also answer this question. I mean, let me play the devil's advocate in this sense now. Yes. You just said something about people not willing to pay taxes. Yes. I've actually asked that question, over and over. I've gone to the streets to ask questions about why people don't pay taxes, and the response I get is, even those who pay taxes, the monies are frittered away. They are in private pockets, so it doesn't trickle down to using it to address the social challenges, that bedevils us as a country, as a nation, as a state.
If the people themselves contribute money that the government spends, then there will be better commitment in seeing that money is used judiciously.
What would be your solution to the population explosion? Because, even from all that you have said, it will be deduced that one of the reasons why we are having a deficit, paucity of funds, the inability of leadership to be able to address issues across board is because the population is so different from what we used to have.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, there was a bit of control of some sort. Remember? Yes, family planning and all of that. How do we address this population explosion?
It is all right to produce children, but you also have a responsibility of seeing to the upbringing of these children to a level where they will be useful to themselves and to you. Now, family planning per se will not work because as you are talking, what type of family planning are you talking about? Are you talking the use of drugs? Are you talking the use of physical abstention? Are you using the use of this? There are religious people that will interpret the Gospels in the Quran or the title to tell you that no, God is against this. Now, but the economic situation will tell us why the Emir of Kano, the 14th Emir of Kano, was an advocate of the fact that the authorities should be mindful or should ensure that people become mindful of their responsibilities. It is not, we have this Al-Majri problem. Why? Because somebody will simply meet with his wife, produce children, and then just throw them to society to cater for. Why? And the problem is usually from our own side of the country. Yes, we have to systematically, intelligently communicate to people and tell them that they themselves, first of all, as you said, there's an economic situation. You need to have enough resources. You have the social issue in the sense that even a woman that produces child every now and then is really endangering her own health, economically and even culturally, because a lot of the social vices we have are occasioned by the breakdown of the family system. And this comes about for the simple reason that the children are becoming too many for the parents or parents to take care of them.
You know, we're still driving?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So the next port of call will be a curve into how you became the Sardona of Katsina. Let's go into that.
Before I became a Sardona, I was already having a title. I got that in 1994. I was in the civil service at that time, and then I got the title, but there could not be any turbaning. And then I was privileged to be close to the royal family. And I tried to be very close to the emirate and very close to the emir. Then in 2018, the last Sardona of Katsina died. He died after a short illness. The late Sardona was the late Dr. Ibrahim Kumasi, the former Inspector General of Police. He was the last Sardona of Katsina. Now, he died on a Thursday. I was out of the country. I returned. No, he died. Yeah, he died on a Thursday, yes. I returned that day. He was buried on a Friday. And I was made the Emir of Sardona of Katsina on Sunday. That is about 2 or 3 days. And it happens by the grace of God and by the decision of His Royal Highness the Emir of Katsina that he felt that I was in a position to hold this position. It is a very, very high level traditional title in Katsina.
What is expected of you as a title holder of this?
Now, Katsina Emirate Council of Chiefs is made up of the Emir of Katsina as the chairman, the Emir of Daura as the deputy chairman, and then some representatives, some titled people. Now, as to the role, a Sardona means a general. Now, you are first of all expected to be 110 loyal to the Emir of Katsina and to the Katsina people, wherever they are. Their welfare, their well-being, their protection within the availability of your resources and the confines of your reach out, you are supposed to devote yourself. Any Katsina man that comes to Abuja and has nowhere else to go, he can walk to Sardaura's house, and the Sardauna must cater for him. So, in a nutshell, it's a responsibility that is given at the absolute discretion of the Emir of Katsina himself and the Emirate Council in support of the Emir. And you have to devote yourself. But there can only be one Sardauna at a time. So it's a title that is given the incumbent unless he dies or he does anything that will make him lose that for any reason.
Is there a tenureship to it?
There is no tenureship. It's for life. But at the same time, as you say, you have to uphold the values of the office.
I was going to ask, so isn't it interesting that you have been both a traditional lawmaker and a formal, a Nigerian, a national lawmaker, I mean, as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? These are two divides that unite.
Yeah, but the two are not totally or mutually exclusive, in the sense that being a traditional title holder helps you to see things in a much wider perspective, because when you go to the palace, people come with all sorts of complaints. So you get to know how people are thinking and how to address issues amicably, diplomatically, and softly. Now, and when you go to the National Assembly, you now would be conscious of the fact that this is your status at your own environment, and you don't want to do anything that will discredit that thing. So you try to live the traditional title holdership when you're in the National Assembly, and when you are playing the traditional title holder, you also bring to bear the fact that you are also a national figure. And you have a reach out that enables you to source for things for your locality. So really the two are mutually reinforcing and not in any way exclusive.
It's very interesting. I mean, before the colonial masters came on board, before they came, into Nigeria, we had a traditional system that was very effective. In fact, that's all we knew at that time. And of course, when they came in, they wanted to have a firm grip of power and access to the different corridors of Nigeria. And so the indirect rule was one way of doing it, which is using the traditional rulers to drive the agenda. Long after the colonial masters left, our own constitution, which of course embraced the traditional rulers, also expunged the powers that were hitherto given to the traditional rulers to at least be able to address issues, at that level, taken away from them. How would you respond to that as a traditional ruler and a lawmaker, a senator?
The indirect rule was patterned after the northern system, which was found to have been very close to what obtained in India and Sudan, and some parts of Africa, where traditional rulers who already had a structure, because of cost and some other consideration, the colonialists felt that rather than going directly and ruling the people and thereby incurring the wrath of the people by becoming responsible for all their failures, the best thing for them to do was to really control the controller. That's what they did. But with the political power shifting gradually over to the political leaders. Now, for as long as the military were there was no problem, because the military had their constituencies and interests. But once it became purely political, that was where the problem started. Because the politicians felt that, look, after all, they were representing the people, whereas the emirs were only representing their families. So why should somebody be a leader simply because he was born by somebody?
Let's bring it down to our present day reality. We've had cases of insecurity, unrest, And one way of also harmonizing and, ensuring law and order, as you rightly put it earlier, is to, engage the traditional rulers who are like, closest to the grassroots in ensuring that there is law and order, expunging those powers from them constitutionally. How do we begin to rewrite what has been wronged?
What you can do is to bring them within the architecture, give them a role, particularly of custody of traditional values. For instance, mediation in terms of local marriages, mediation in terms of communal disputes, mediation in terms of religious conflicts, mediation in terms of maintenance of law and order. You do that, give them a very strong participation in certain governmental functions. Let's say like the security architecture. Make them not only purely observers. No. If you want to, for instance now, school enrollment, if you want children to come to school, get the district head to go. He knows everybody. He knows the number of children that everybody has. And if he calls him and he says so, but at the moment, no. It is left for the councillor. It is left for the chairman of the local government, to the exclusion of these people. They are only brought in. In fact, if they are invited to security meeting, they come as observers.
That leads me to the question of, which is a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to be an uncomfortable question.
Sure.
Are you in support of the dilution of the traditional role, constitutionally?
I am in favor of allowing to get the Constitution to recognize the existence of the traditional institutions and give them a mediation role, conciliation role, advisory role within the public leadership or administrative structure.
This traditional structure allows for people to assume their position and hang on to it for life, right?
Yes.
Unless
other things being equal.
Unless there's a caveat to it. Unless maybe they misbehave and then they are banished and all of that. Now, could that also be the reason why even at the formal level, people are predisposed, to hanging on to power until they die?
You see, inherent in every human being is the desire to be powerful, to hold the power, whether it is political power, family power, social power, economic power, inherent in every human being. Most of those who get power are people that have one form of deprivation or the other in their history, in their makeup, in their way of life. You see, the tendency is if you are born from a very poor family and you grow up to be powerful and in charge of treasury, that fear that you had been born in is still inherent in you. You still want to acquire more money because you don't want, first of all, you want to show the people that you are no longer what you used to be. Two, you want to make sure that whatever happens, you cannot go back to what you were. And three, as I say, power is sweet. Those who get it feel you are. One governor, former governor, told me that, if you are a governor, you feel you are like God. In Nigeria, power, political power has become means of wealth, have become means of prestige, have become means of good living. So much so that people, the moment they hold it and it changes their lives, they don't want to lose it. They hold on to it. The easiest way of getting rich is by having political power. I was sitting with somebody who told me, look, he had been, since this politics started, he had been, from 1999 he has been this, from 2003 he has been this, from 2007 he has been this, from 2011 he has been this, from 2015, from 2019, and say what? I said, what from 2023? Now, he cannot think of his life outside the political setup. No. That is why you find somebody who has been a governor going to be a senator. You see? Yeah. Then when he finishes, you see a governor going to be a minister. I mean, you see, why? Because that lack of confidence, of thinking that once you leave the public office, you are nothing.
That brings to question of youth.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about, because the youth have accused the elders of state capture.
Yeah.
Since 1966, it's been one person, like you rightly put it, assuming one position after another over and over and over, and not even leaving the space for the young people to also be part of nation building. They are advocating for inclusion. How do we begin to balance this shit? In other developed countries, you see people, young people of 35, 30, 28, assuming, very important and significant position. Ironically, these same people who are in power, who are holding on to power, started off when they were very young. You have somebody who was a senior special assistant at the age of 21, back in the day. Yeah. So why? How do we correct this anomaly?
First of all, nobody gives you power. Nobody. On a platter of gold, you have to take it. You have to devise ways of getting it. 2, our youth seem to have a sense of entitlement. They don't work hard. They lose too easily. If you try and you don't get it, and you try again and you don't get it, and you try again, you get it. But the fact is that, no, they start from a position of a psychological disadvantage. They feel that they don't have money. But who is given the money? You, they. They're the people that are given the money to influence things. If the youth today, as a group, decide that, look, we will not vote for anybody but somebody who is below the age of this, we will not take anybody's money to sway us to do this, they will get to the promised place. But on the one hand, they are the people that push the vehicle to move so that they move without them. And they are the ones that are complaining. You see, let them, first of all, the youth of today are better educated than the youth of the past. They are more in number. I mean, not less than 60% of our youth. Now tell me, if the youth should get together and believe that, look, if we want to really better our lot, let us get together and form a bloc. You see, in politics, it is the number of votes that counts, not the slogans that you say.
I hope that the young people are listening now, and they're taking the messages that you are pushing out, to them. You cannot. I mean, power is not served to you a la carte. You've got to work for it.
Yes.
Okay. Noted. And the message is passed. Yes. Now let's. I'm doing my own beat now. Am I not doing my own beat?
No. It includes you, so please you now go and look for it.
Okay. I've taken it in.
Yeah.
I've taken it under advisement, and I will. I'm working towards that. Yeah. Anyway, so back to you. I mean, for people who don't know much about Katsina, can you give us a sense of what Katsina State is about and what it stands for?
Well, first of all, it's a good question. Now, Katsina is made up predominantly of homogeneous people, made up of 2 groups. We have the Habis, the original inhabitants of the area, and they have ourselves the Fulani people, who are indigenous to that place, but they have been there for millennia, that you cannot simply. So it is a homogeneous place. Now, 2, we had the benefit of having traditional rulers that were well enlightened well before their time. Our emir was the first emir in the north to go to the UK, to visit UK. He was the first one to use an aircraft to go from one place to another. So he realized early enough that Western education is a means of future livelihood. So he made sure, in fact, the first high institution in the north was created in Katsina. That's the old Katsina College in 1921. Now, so Katsina has been, and then the best polo players, because we have a quite peaceful terrain. The white people, when they came to Nigeria, they came to the north, they settled well in Katsina. So we had all these legacies to fall back onto. So first of all, Katsina is a very peaceful terrain. Well, now we have all these incursions, and these are all by strangers. We are very close to Niger. You see, look, a good part of Katsina land is in Niger Republic. So it is the same people. So Katsina people are homogeneous. Katsina people are very hardworking. We are the only country now that has produced 2 democratic presidents.
The only state.
The only state, and 3 presidents. Buhari as a military man, Eradua, and Buhari again. Now we also have a vice president because we had Eradua. So now, if you talk in ministries, if you talk in this public service, for instance, now Katsina is the only state in Nigeria that has had 3 permanent secretaries in the Ministry of Defense. You had Amadi Kurfi, you have myself, a humble self, and then you have the other one, the doctor who became a permanent secretary after. Now, if you now, Katsina had 2 IGs, MD Yusuf and Kumasi. We have had a lot of, that could not be, that could not have been, sorry, I've said Dr. Sanusi, so that he could not say, watch this and say, I forgot his name. Dr. Sanusi, Haruna Sanusi, who was the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Defense. So we have 3. You see, so in every aspect of human life, Katsina people are there.
We can't end this program without talking about your time as a permanent secretary.
So,
I mean, we know how permanent secretary, that position, how powerful it is. Then and now. I mean, if you have to compare notes, how would you assess it?
I was a permanent secretary from 1993 to 1999. About 6 years at the odd. During our time, it was sheer hard work, competence that brings you out. Because although the civil service was not that many as now, I was made a permanent secretary when I was on assignment. I didn't know. Now you have to go through interview, you have to go through this. 3, I operated mostly under the military. You see, there's a difference. The military really had their minds toward their own profession. They are soldiers primarily. They came into administration as an aberration. And so we had more influence, not power. A permanent secretary is not supposed to be powerful, but influential, because his role is to articulate and then interpret the policies that are used. Exactly, he administered. Now, so really our role were challenged. Until I left, I had no company. I was permanent secretary in the Ministry of Defense. I had no allegiance or interest in any defense contractor or defense contract. No, doing the job, managing the armed forces, because as the permanent secretary, you are the chief administrator. The operational head is the chief of defense staff, while you are the administrative head. Now, and also, the challenges, as I said, were quite different, because we're not dealing with politicians. We are the ones that were doing everything. A soldier comes in, he does not bring a special assistant or a special advisor. No. Anything and everything that he wanted was within the system. So really the system was going smoothly. Politics actually exports everything.
It begs the question of, the state of the civil service as we have it today. I mean, just recently, the president was also, he read the Riot Act, to civil servants on illegalities that permeates the system. Now, you would hear of a civil servant that has 30 buildings somewhere, has houses in place. And the question is, how did they even amass this kind of wealth?
Civil servants are now being brought from outside. Farmsteads are being brought in. Political cronies are being brought in and made responsible for very high and, quote unquote, lucrative posts. So they have come. We have had people coming from outside and becoming heads of service. From outside, never had been an assistant director, never had been a director for one day. Appointed permanent secretary and made head of service. What do you expect? So really, it is the politics that has polluted the civil service.
Okay, so what's our way out?
Well, the way out now is really to do what we see crisis management. First of all, improve the lot of the civil servant. Pay him salary and wage that is living, that he could use. And then monitor him. If he leaves, you have any way of knowing. Look, there is life after civil service. We have been civil servant. We came out, and by the grace of God, we have made it. That fear, make him feel secure. Let him not feel that, no, he's there simply tomorrow. And let him be given the responsibility to do what he's supposed to do. You cannot simply bring an advisor from outside and put him within the loop. No. Let him, and a lot of this, as I say, a lot of these people that are now found to have either stolen or amassed wealth were not core civil servants. No, they are brought from outside.
Okay, so it brings me to the question of one. I'm going to put you on the spot now. If you are given the position of the number one citizen in the country, what are the three pivotal things you would do to change the narrative of this country?
Well, I mean to that. First of all, no. You see, I'm happy it is if not when. You see, now, first of all, I will review the machinery and ensure that whoever is supposed to perform a task is also given the equipment and the incentives to perform these acts. 2, right from the head down the level, I will live by example. And I will task everybody under to live that way. There is no question. Look, you see, there should be fairness and equity. There should be inclusion. 3, I know how diverse our society is. And a lot of the pitfalls we have are simply brought about by a sense of exclusion. People feel marginalized. People feel they're not involved. So I will have to instill a system that will integrate our diversity through inclusiveness.
You were part of the Vision 2010.
I was a center of it.
Would you say you accomplished what you set out to achieve?
In terms of the drawing up the process, providing the roadmap, the timeline, the action plan that will see a Nigeria that will be harmonious, equitable, socially caring, we drew up the roadmap that by 2010, Nigeria would have been a different place because we started from identifying the critical success factors and in each one of them, determining where we were at the particular time of the commencement of the process, where we wanted to be by 2010, and drawing up a roadmap of how to get there. We did that effectively. And I think I will find a copy of the report and give you one of these days. Unfortunately, it happened during the time of General Abacha. And I will say this here now, which is a good thing. Until we started to the end, there was not a single time, apart from approving and inaugurating the terms of reference and the composition and the provision of the resources, which was double-edged because the resources were provided primarily by the private sector and then only tangentially by the public sector. Apart from this, there was not a single day. I was under the secretary to the government of the federation, who was my boss, but I was serving the coordinator and the secretary. Not a single day did anybody call me or the chairman to tell us a direction that he or they wanted us to follow. No. There were 248 members drawn up from across the spectrum, inclusive of Nigerians and foreigners that are working in Nigeria, Nigerians in diaspora, the youth, the women groups, the traditional rulers, the technocrats, the bureaucrats, everybody was involved. For one complete year, we worked tirelessly. Indeed, the coordinator, my counterpart in Malaysia, we invited him. When he came, he said that the process we are following, if Malaysia, from whom we borrowed the template, if they had followed that way, Malaysia would have been different from what it was. Now, we did all the things. But what happened? We even drew up a law and a template for implementation, created outfits and structure. But what happened? Politics came in, and the first thing was the incumbent, the president then thought it was an agenda drawn up by Abacha to succeed himself. So it was thrown away. So
you are literally saying that we had a vision and it was thrown away and we became visionless.
If only we gave a role for everybody. I tell you this, honestly speaking, we have been talking of a different Nigeria.
Well, I guess with time we would restore the vision and we'll move on from there. We are getting to our destination.
Yeah, okay.
And even if we don't get to the destination today, we'll continue from where we stopped.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
In the course of knowing you, I found out one very unique thing about you. You love books.
The most peaceful, safest place is a study. And the best companion that will never pollute you, even if what the contents are bad, is your book. So I have developed that. I'm an indoor person. I spend, if I'm at home, either sitting with my family or 40 to 50% of my time is spent. And I have a book every time everywhere I'm going to.
So is there a color? Are there colors to this Saudana as we know him?
Yeah.
In terms of, now I know you love books.
Yeah.
You've spent time with family.
Yeah, I do.
Yes. So are there other colorful aspects of Saudana that we would love to know that you haven't shared with the public before, or maybe you have shared, but we would like to know on this historical trajectory that we're on?
I think it's commitment to the family. You see, your family is part and parcel of you.
There's one thing about my dad, which is, should anything happen, anything, you're able to talk about it and you're able to resolve it right there and then. And you see, it's something, so there's never been anything, we don't carry anything to the morning. If it happens at night, we sort it out there and then. And that's how we all have been. He's a person, when he wants to help, he doesn't even want anyone to know it's actually coming from him, and things like. So you see, these are the type of things, all these sort of virtues are things that have now all been instilled in us.
In everything that you will see around him, you will see somebody who is ever willing to work. Then the other thing is that whereas it has been said that when you want to hide something from a black man, that you keep it inside the book, you will fail seriously if you try that with Senator Ibrahim either, because over the years, I have come to know the worst place to hide something from him is to keep it in the book, because he will read the book. If you give him a letter to proofread 10 times, you are going to write that letter 10 times. The red barrows will be so many. And those are the things that define excellence. Those are the things that define thoroughness. Those are the things that define the man that we are talking about, the man that has become an enigma of sort. You made one point when I was introducing myself. You asked, Sayende, you are his lawyer. Yes, a quintessential detribalized person who is because, yes, with a proud heritage as a Fulani man, but he believes in excellence. And wherever he can find amongst wherever the color, wherever the race, you're just good to go.
He has a strong mind. A friend in need, a friend indeed. Very generous, very sympathetic, very showing concern about people's problems. And he looks after the less privileged. I will pray for him to have a good life, long life, so that he continue helping. He is very, very good in helping people. He's too generous, helping the small, the big, the less privileged. As I said before, I admire him that, and sky is the limit.
I want to ask you one question. As a Saldana, when I came in here, I was expecting to see 4 beautiful angels, welcoming me in, but I saw one.
The one that you saw is a combination of all the 4 rolled in one. I think that is the only. It's a matter of choice, and I think I have made up my bed, and I love the way I'm lying on it.
Is there anything you would have done differently? I mean, if you're given an opportunity to live life all over again?
Maybe I should have been in the academia. Because really, I think that is my real inner interest.
What's your favorite quotation? By anyone or by yourself? What's the philosophy you live by?
It has a religious connotation. You cannot be a complete person until you wish for your brother and sister what you wish for yourself. If we all live by that maxim, by that ideology, by that belief, by that saying, you'll find that society would be a much better place for all until the end of life.
Love thy neighbor as you love yourself. I mean, that's a mantra for national cohesion. And it's actually the oil that we need to grease the engine of this unity in diversity that would preach. And hopefully every individual, every Nigerian should be able to imbibe that philosophy, because it will go a long way in harmonizing and unifying us, to greater heights. And so on that note, we want to say thank you so much for being part of Conversation with History. And to our viewer, we appreciate you for being part of it. I hope you've been able to take 1 or 2 things, lessons from the conversation. Until next time, when we come your way, I am Thekla Wilkie, and I'll always say, be kind to one another and stay well.